So one thing that I saw as I'm going through this journey, there's this post of The Rock talking about his first time doing In-N-Out Burger, and
I saw that.
people started seeing things, and they're like, "Oh, The Rock, like, come on, Rock, why are you lying?" And then I always say there's a question behind the question, right? Like, there's always a question behind the question, and there's a piece where our society does like inauthenticity, like it does. And how fair is it to point someone out and call them on their shit? Now, I don't say not to do that. I think that's actually important to do. But whenever we're calling people out, we should also call ourselves out too.
Yeah.
Because there's this place where it's like, well, we don't want you to be inauthentic, but that's not true. Because you got a bunch of WWE superstars playing an act. Like, they're playing an act.
It's so amazing that you bring this up, because last night I literally binged 2 podcast episodes that were just released of John Cena. Mm-hmm. And watching John Cena on a podcast, you want to talk about a genuine, authentic individual. Like, seeing him on that podcast, and also to credit Rock, Dwayne, he is an authentic guy, and there's a lot of context to that you and I both know that, there's a good chance he may have never hit an In-N-Out Burger. At the same time, somebody who makes a comment like that, I personally do follow him, and if you follow him, which is the whole point of it, you'll see that he has cheat days. So if somebody's like, "Oh, you don't eat burgers like that," he does do that. He actually has a balance. His workout schedule is kind of funny when you follow him, and you do. You know, I forget what day it is, if it's Saturday or Sunday, but he gorges on his cheat days. You know, and that's a cool way to, like, for you as well. It's like, it's talking about the fact that what his driving factor is for everybody is it's okay to every once in a while eat junk food.
Yeah. And it's like, that's the thing. I know eventually the public's going to attack me too. I don't know where. I don't know how. It might not even be a story that's true. That's the messed up part. And they're like, "Oh, this is what Cliff's doing," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" Like,
well, it's funny you say it's funny you say that, because I got my first one this week actually. I shared a podcast clip from another podcast about Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I shared how a lot of people that I experience in my world, and this is specifically speaking of my experience, a lot of people get in AA meetings and it becomes the supplement of the alcoholism, and where they're just like going, it's like it becomes part of their life. And they never break free to, like, experience their life in sobriety, because every day, all day, they're in those meetings, and they become. And this is, I got messages and negativity from people who need everyday meetings and 2 to 3 day meetings and stuff like that, and they felt that I wasn't being empathetic. And in the actual reverse, I was trying to be empathetic, because I'm speaking from my personal experience, and I'm an extrovert. I feed off of other people, and I feed off crowds, and I feed off socialization. For me, my sober journey would never continue and be successful if I stayed in those church basements telling old war stories and trying to grow. I had to move forward in order to maintain my sobriety, because sitting around in those meetings just made me want to drink more. And I don't mean that as a joke to anybody in AA. I know it's a sensitive subject. It is for me personally, and I'm a sober person. When it comes to alcohol, but for me, I had to use them as a beginning of the journey and a foundation, but not the full journey.
Yeah, and you know, like, as I'm going through this journey more and more, I realize you have to pay context for people, like, because if you don't paint the context, they will flare up, get mad, turn it into whatever they turn it into, and I ultimately go is like, I have my own belief systems, and they serve me, and sometimes they don't. You know, sometimes in some ways they don't serve me at all. They absolutely suck. And sometimes they did serve me at one time, but they no longer serve me. So I got to let it go and hold on to something new. But I remind people that I truly, genuinely care about them, and I want the best for them. And this is the good guy and the quote-unquote bad guy, the good girl and the bad girl. Because I think when people are happy, like when they're truly, genuinely happy, they don't want to see other people hurt. Like it's not the natural thing to do. And so it's like, okay, everybody go find what your happiness is and go find what your true happiness is. You know, like start with the basics. We know we want to be able to breathe. We know we want to be able to eat foods that nourish us and give us energy. We know we want to be able to move effectively. And then we start going into deeper and deeper layers where we want to contribute. We want to not only give to ourselves, but we want to give to others. It's natural, like we naturally are good. And that's, I think, a message that really needs to be spread a little bit more is like human beings naturally are good. And what was interesting, I was speaking with an amazing coach. I mean, she's a powerhouse at what she does. And she told me I can't use the love mantra because I'm the fighter. Like I teach you how to fight and to flow in the fight. And I go, I get it. But here's what's interesting. The very best fighters only want to go with the very best fighters. Like a high-level fighter isn't going to want to, like, how do I fight someone who is easy to fight and beat up?
It's like a prosecutor, how they only take cases that they can win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The slam dunk, like, did you guys like that?
Yeah.
So I go, oh my goodness. Like, this is where it gets really crazy. In fighting, your competitiveness is your collaboration. Your competitiveness is your collaboration. Because when you're going with the best of the best, that is a collaborative effort where you both want to show up and you both want to see, hey, who's the best of the best? How do we do this? And I get to see how our world goes through its transitions because real is in the eye of the beholder. It always is. And I started looking at, we started with WWE and WWF. I love that. I love that when I was a kid. Like some of the storylines, like, I would get like drawn in to the storyline.
And that was the funniest thing that John Cena was talking about. Is it was like the rawest conversation because he first opened up with, for anyone that thinks wrestling's fake, we all know. It was just like it's just like a movie. It's just like a TV show. It's entertainment and it's storyline. And he went into a huge tangent. I recommend you and anybody. It's on Club Shay Shay. He was on there yesterday. I think it was yesterday or so. Club Shay Shay, and then also he was on Whiskey Ginger podcast. So 2 different interviews and 2 different style interviews. And it was great for him because usually when I watch people in a row or I watch multiple episodes and they repeat the same sentences because they've been fed the questions in advance. These 2 were not like that. And you could see him genuinely answering and opening up. He went in and talked about when he was homeless and the story of how he got into the WWE. And it was so funny that nobody thinks that, everybody thinks that everybody in the WWE makes $1 million and all this other stuff. But he talks about the other piece of authenticity is the integrity of this man, because when you go into the WWE, something I didn't know, but you probably know going into UFC, he went in at a time where you didn't have like you were a big cat, and that's how everybody knew you, but he didn't have a name. So when he signed up with the WWE, he actually signed over the rights to his first and last name. So everything that he does in his life, they get a cut of. Now, most people, the way the questions were presented to him was the way that most people interpret that as, oh, that's a real pain in the ass. They suck your money out for the rest of your life. Dude, he flipped the script on it in the most genuine and authentic way, in crediting the WWE for how and why he has a career and giving him the opportunity when he was living in a van in the parking lot between practices. And he said, no matter what I do in my life would be nothing without them taking the chance on me in the beginning when I was nothing. And it was so amazing because we hear a lot today about people with referrals or when they're given business from other people. And, they're like, oh, they wanted a cut of the business or they want a cut of everything they give me and all this stuff. And it's like, it's one of those things where hearing that was such a breath of fresh air to go back to what you're talking about of the love of the collaboration and the respect of each other and the respect that each other have going into something and knowing you got to respect the risk sometimes that people take on you. and know that you don't always have to pay things back as a favor. That's not the way I'm trying to say that people's relationships need to be. But it was really powerful to see someone that is dealing with tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, and the fact that he's okay. Like, he was genuinely okay giving that up because he knows that he would still be in that car without them, or he'd be working at Home Depot or Lowe's. And I think that was really powerful to hear. And also, I thought about you while I was watching it because of the fact of just the drive. And it's the real drive. It wasn't, oh yeah, my friend was in this, and he got into it because he was, and he said it the best way possible. I've had every success because the opportunities cross my paths and I'm always ready. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was my biggest takeaway for all of this, was telling people that opportunities are always in front of you. The question is whether you're ready for them.
Yeah. You're hitting me with a principle, actually, and this was one I shared several years ago, but it's such a true principle, and it comes down to three things. This isn't worth it. That's where it always starts. It always starts with, this isn't worth it. No matter what you do, no matter what you're saying, even when you talk to someone, their critical minds are thinking like, they're a stranger, you got to earn my trust, yada, yada, yada. This isn't worth it. And then you get to a point, if you keep putting in the reps, all right, this is worth it. At least this is worth it. And then there's a space where I'm not worth this much. And people normally don't look to go after the I'm not worth this much because they're too busy looking at that lens of this isn't worth it. And I get it. When you're putting in the reps in something, when you're doing something, when you're going after something, and it's not worth it. And that is why, as a coach specifically, I remind people to do what they love. I tell them, go do what you love. And Grant Cardone, he says, don't do what you love, do what makes you rich. I believe he's doing the same thing, though, because he loves being rich.
And that's his driver. That's exactly it. His driver, he's very open about that. His driver is the money, and that's okay because he owns that. And he's like you just said.
I don't care what a person. Just off of what you're saying, I don't care what a person's driver is. Just know that it's your driver. And know that it's your driver and drive with it.
And like we talked about in the beginning, if your driver is money, then be open about that in the front. Because like in my years and my experience, and you've definitely seen the same. If people pretend like they're in it for the love and they're in it for the collaboration and they're in it for all this building and all this other stuff, but really it's about the money. If they don't express that in the beginning, so we all have expectations and reality set, they're bound to be disappointed if we're not on the same page. And then all of a sudden the relationship really deteriorates fast. Yep. And I think
it was. What is Warren? I don't remember how Warren Buffett says it. He says building integrity, and I know I'm butchering this. Building integrity takes 15 years. Destroying it takes like 15 seconds.
I've been open on my podcast forever. I am not playing a clean slate or anything like that. The skeletons aren't. My closet door is open to my skeletons, and I've burned bridges in my past, whether it be through immaturity, through being too drunk, or just not caring and being egotistical. And I can tell you that in the retrospective part of the last 25 years. Every relationship that I was open and honest with, even if it wasn't the way that I knew that the other person wanted to hear it, or it wasn't the topic the other person wanted to hear, 100% of the time when I'm open with it, it's respectful throughout and if we decide to go different ways, we at least did it because we were on the same page, not because they think they got fucked over and they're leaving and then they were, or vice versa. I thought I got fucked over and I really wasn't. Or vice versa, and we just didn't have the right expectations from the jump.
Yeah. One of the craziest things that I've been learning with business, it's so fascinating to me. The real work of business is usually that unseen stuff, right? Like, and this also fascinates me with, like, even with what The Rock's doing. the things that are unseen, I know this guy can work like a mother effer.
I got to give you context too. I'm going to a conference next week with Valuetainment. I don't know if you follow them on YouTube. I'm going to their conference in Florida, and he's a headline speaker. So you better be sure that I'm tucking a shoulder through that crowd to try to shake his hand. So it's so funny that you brought him up. I don't want everybody to know, and him if he ends up listening to it. This is completely organic, and it made me laugh that you opened up with him, because in 7 days or so, I'm going to be in the same building as him.
That's super cool. Yeah, no, I love that. Because I love listening to The Rock straight up, because he's determined, he's dedicated, he works his ass off, and I realize, we are in a cancel culture right now. For sure, where they will just and you suck now. It's just we don't like you anymore. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is kind of scary and exciting all at the same time. Because you think someone like Dave Chappelle, he's riding the wave.
Yep.
He's riding it, just woo! And I go, the most important thing you can do is just be who you are. And who you are is in the moment, because you can be in a different state. You can be in a different frame of mind. You can be if you're in a happy mood, you're thinking about this thing. And if you're in a bad mood, you're thinking about something completely different. So all you have is the moment to pull from. And then when people, they will try and call you out for you being who you are. And I caught one. This was, I'm on my YouTube channel, and this one guy, he gets on my channel, and he goes, "Hey, how did it feel getting knocked out on live TV?" I go, "Well, it didn't feel very great." It kind of felt like the way I thought it was going to feel, because I know the UFC will show it in different angles, and there were angles I didn't even know, how did they even get that angle? How were they able to show it like that? And the guy ended up being pretty cool, though. He was like, "Oh my, you're a cool guy."
Yeah, he meant it genuinely. He really wanted to know, what does it feel like? Yeah.
No, he didn't mean it genuinely.
Oh.
He was poking fun.
Oh, wow.
But it was the way that I took it. So I go, I get the choice on how I'm going to take my situation.
I got you.
That's all I get. So I could have been like, "You mother..." Well, I'm not going to be that. I'm just going to... Eating that need did not feel good. It kind of sucked. Well, and then I'm looking at the lights that wasn't fun.
It's so awesome to hear that, because you see a lot today, from celebrities and different things like that, where they're venting about how annoying people are and trolling and stuff like that. And whether it be in person when you're out to dinner with your family or online. And it's interesting, I'll go back to Cena's thing again, because that was something that Shay had asked him. He's like, "Hey, what is it like when you go out to dinner, and how do you deal with everybody when?" And he literally, again, handles it in the moment. He goes, "You know what I do?" He goes, "Every single person there made my career, and every single person is having their experience and their moment, because when are they going to ever see a celebrity? Some people go their whole life and never see a celebrity in real life. So even though this is my all day long drudge, it's also how we all make our money." And he talks about the fact that it's not also about making the money, it's connecting with these people. And he talked about how I didn't know that he has the record at the Children's Miracle Network for the most trips for the Make-A-Wish. And one of the, or I think it's Children's Miracle Network, or one of the, whatever that organization is, does Make-A-Wish. And whatever that organization is, and he talked about going through there. And I go back over to, he said what he does is, he tries to, when he goes to the restaurant, he tries to do it in the beginning, where he goes in and he just says, "Okay, everybody, I'm here. Everybody get together. Let's take one big group photo." And he said that strategy, when he can do it, can take 80 people and then diffuse it. And then he says, "Okay, everybody," he's respectful of their time right off the bat and gives them the value from the jump. And then he says, "Okay, everybody, let's all go down and let's enjoy our meals and let's have a good evening." And he said that tends to work for him when he can do it, because it allows everybody to get because all they want is a moment of your eyes and your attention. And I think the more, and it doesn't matter if it's a handshake or if it's a group photo, people just want to be acknowledged. And I think that guy reaching out to you, that's a guy that most likely, I don't want to speak for his life, but statistically, things are going on and he's acting out and he's projecting, and you just responding to him, you gave him his moment, and he got a reaction. And the fact is, what I try to drill home myself too is, a lot of these trolls, the ones that don't actually react the way that you did, if you react the right way to trolls like you did, you tend to get a better response. The ones that you don't are actually bots, or they're really just trolls that honestly, they're in their grandma's basement, they ain't going anywhere. So but I want to go back. You mentioned Chappelle real quick, and I want to drill into the authenticity part. I really love that you and I are the same age, so we grew up with Chappelle disappearing and going, and none of us really knowing why. And some people, everybody having theories and rumors as to why. But now that he's back and he's told the story as to why he left, and the fact that it was actually all about integrity and authenticity, and he was offered too many big contracts that he didn't, that would give him up himself. And his way of getting around it to handle his mental health and the pressure was to disappear for a while. And I really thought, like, what a sacrifice. What a sacrifice to maintain integrity and maintain authenticity when you're at the level where the only way you can continue to get jobs is if you give up yourself. Because you get to that level where it's hard to maintain your own authenticity and genuineness when you have to accept very high dollar figures from people, whether they're sponsors or movies or whatever it is you have going on. And I'm not recommending everybody do that, but it was really fascinating to hear, because we were told it was a mental breakdown and all this other stuff, and now to hear that it was mental health, and it was to protect himself and to protect his family and protect his art and his voice, and that was cool.
No, that was super cool. Like, I look at the power that we all have as human beings, right? And I ultimately, I want to just give people their power back. They've always had it. It always existed. And, he went through, his story's a heck of a journey. And I start looking and I go, I want other people to go create their stories as they're going through their process. Because when you have a story that's rich with ups and downs, you just get it differently. You get things at a different level.
And when you see everything, when you see the forest and the trees, you only get to see that through failure and trial and tribulation, because it's a gift. And a lot of people don't, and I'll keep going back to those podcasts as well, but that was another thing. It was failure is a gift. And a lot of times, I know, like, I come from a blue collar family that, sometimes my episodes don't resonate because that's not the life that they choose or they have. And where I try to drive home, and I know you do as well, is it's the scale. You don't have to start $1 million business to make a difference in your life. It might just be that you enjoy poetry and you keep your full-time job, but you make a goal that every week you're going to an open mic night. And let's say that's your thing, and you want to, and that's what makes you happy. It doesn't have to make you money to make you happy, but if you're living a life that has zero happiness, if you go through a day and there's nothing that made you happy, you have to readjust your time and include some sort of joy every single day. And I was talking to my son, he's 13 and getting ready for wrestling coming up here in a couple weeks. And he's like, all right, how do I get started? Like, what do I want to do? And I'm like, you're 13 years old, so let's not go crazy in the gym or anything like that. But every day for the next 3 weeks, you need to run, jog, or walk for 30 minutes every single day. And then after 3 weeks, you begin to accelerate it to something higher. But because you didn't do anything all summer and you played video games and had fun, which is true, which is what summer is all about, and you had a good time, ramping yourself up, that's how I try to do everything, is try to build with something small and one simple actionable item. What is an achievable item every day? And if everybody spent 30 minutes doing something that made them happy every day, everybody has 30 minutes. And that's the thing. I guess let me get back to what I'm trying to say is everybody can find the time, no matter how busy your life is, if you intentionally make the time.
Yeah. I love that, because my mind, it's very black and white and gray. what you're saying, and David Goggins says, do something intentionally that sucks.
There you go.
Every day do something that sucks. And that is his drive and driver, or a piece of it. I'm not speaking for him. This guy's an absolute beast and he knows his life. But what I do like is he stands for what he stands for, just as you're standing for what you stand for. And you're ultimately standing for the same thing.
Yep. And Goggins,
do what you want to do.
Exactly. And Goggins, when he talks about doing something hard, that's because that's part of his passion. He believes the same thing in the sense that failure is a lesson, and doing things hard allows you to maintain them. So yeah, it's all relative to that joy, and that's his joy.
Yeah.
His joy is in struggle. And that's a good thing.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I remember, so he's running in the desert. He's like, someone asked the question, why are you running in the desert? Because you're not, motherfucker.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
So I go to South Mountain, and I didn't realize I was crazy. I thought I was normal. I really did. And I'm in South Mountain, and I'm the only one in this hot ass desert, blittering my skin. And I'm going up this thing, and I love it. I love the suffer. I love it, not because of the suffer, because of how I can use my mind in it. And I remember I had a football coach, and every time he would say, how hot is it? And we would say, not hot enough.
Yeah.
How hot is it? Not hot enough. When we realize we have control over this thing, that's where we win. And that doesn't mean it doesn't get triggered or traumatized or all that stuff, because it does. But we ultimately have control. And we get to dictate what it's going to do, what it's not going to do, how it's going to show up. And so the struggle, it's so important to me, because I go, oh, I can be happy through the flow, like when I'm riding the wave, because there's times I'm riding it. And I can be happy when I'm eating sand, because there's times I'm doing that too. Just from...
And what's great is when you're eating sand, there's a bunch of things that happen. One is, if it's financial sand, you're stacking dollars, and not stacking dollars like, oh, I'm going to make so much money. You're going, okay, I got $1. How far can I stretch $1? And that's from a financial standpoint. So if you're struggling with a budget, you're constantly being that. And what comes out of that is resourcefulness. And then all of a sudden, you're not thinking linearly. Then you're thinking about things in multiple lanes on a highway, and you're like, okay, this is for this lane, this is for this lane. That's what comes out when things aren't easy. When things aren't easy and things are hard, you start to think about varying ways to do it. Now, what's the easy way to find a hard situation is find the easy way out. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is everybody just tries to find more efficient ways to execute whatever it is that is challenging them. That's what builds character and integrity. And again, just like you said, anybody that's listening that knows me, tons of times where I've done this, and tons of times where I've done this wrong. I'm not a perfect expert by any means. What I am is in a reflective state of my life, and I see my failures, and I also see my successes. And guess what? The cool part is, because I'm taking time and you are taking time to reflect, we're able to construct this like Power Rangers type situation where we're like forming all the best parts of what worked and then cutting all the things that didn't work. And I feel like a lot of times when I talk to people that are stuck in negative ruts for long periods of time, and that could be through alcoholism, drug addiction, or even just failing at business or not being passionate about their job, it's one of those things where you have to be reflective of everything. And what you talked about too, of controlling your brain, it's the same thing. Like up until about a few months ago, I'm very new to this. I used to get really upset and take a lot of things personal. And it came to a real lot of bad things that happened in my life personally that allowed me to come to this place where I can say, you know what? Every single time I overreacted or I flipped out or whatever, I chose to do that. And until I got to the place where I was able to hold myself accountable that it was my choice to overreact, despite anything somebody else was doing to me or anything like that, if I chose to give that reaction, I have to own that choice. I can't say, well, I did that because they pushed me to that limit, or they screwed me over on that deal or whatever else, or they lied to me. I have to actually, the more powerful situation is where I feel now, where if somebody does do that, I just cut them off. And I'll have the conversation with them point blank. And I'm going to say, listen, I'm finished with this conversation or this business deal or whatever, this relationship. And here's my reason. And my reason isn't that you're wrong or you did anything wrong. My reason is that I don't want to work like this. I don't want to work in these situations because I don't want to have to choose to not escalate my emotions. If my emotions are being escalated, that's my body telling me something's wrong.
Yeah. I love that because I was listening to a guy, Michael Burnoff, and actually I'm wearing Average Suck shirt, so that's a plug for them. They are an amazing group of people. But he talks about our ability to communicate. And I like figuring out, like, how do you get the result? That is the most important thing to me. And the funny thing, it's actually the most important thing for everybody, but there are processes, principles, and systems, tactics, and strategies that have to be effectively used to make that a reality. And so people want the result, but they won't necessarily always learn the lessons. And some people will. So I'm not saying one group of people do and one, that's up to them, right? I start looking at it and I go, oh my goodness, it's how we communicate with ourselves. It's how we communicate with others. And it's how we communicate with our environment. If we can communicate with those three things correctly, we will get to where we're looking to go. I go back to the celebrity who he brings everybody up in a group, like he strategizes this. And strategy can be a very good thing and also a very bad thing. You know, we have strategy in war, in religion, in politics. Strategy exists. And how we're using the strategy is also important. Asking ourselves the question, what are the intentions of this strategy? So the celebrity's intention was everybody gets together. They get to feel togetherness. They get to feel that for a moment, and then we go do what we do, right? And I'm like, oh, this is a game of strategy. It's a game of strategy. What strategy are you using, and is your strategy working? And I'll give an example. If I'm in a starving area and I'm going around with these fresh hot buns or something like that, and I'm just walking around the starving area, and no one has money, and I'm charging $250 a bun. Best believe I'm going to get mugged like no tomorrow. All those buns are going to be gone. And I can say, like, what the heck? Why'd you all do that? You're bad people. No, I'm a stupid person for doing that. To put myself in that kind of a situation, that's my fault. So I didn't communicate with my environment, and I didn't communicate with others very effectively. That's on me. And so ultimately I go, oh, the most important person to communicate with is yourself, because you can change yourself. Change where you're at, change what you're doing, change how you're showing up. And that's also the hardest thing for people to do, because we want to believe that the world doesn't revolve around us, but we sure act differently. I say that much. Like, the world doesn't revolve around you, yet you're acting like it does. Why? Because it actually does. We have a perspective, and we live in ours, all of us. So it does actually revolve around us.
Yeah, it's I try to tell people when I'm not connecting with them, I try to say I use that old butcher shop analogy you and I've talked about before, and then the other one I'm starting to use now is clouds. And I talk about if we don't agree on something and we're having trouble on something, I try to tell people, I was like, imagine right now you and I laying on the grass and we're staring up at the clouds. You and I are going to see completely different shapes and completely different animals.
Yeah.
And because it's going to be dependent on what our life experiences are.
Yeah.
And I think when people just simplify disagreements to that minuscule minimalization, it becomes it becomes a human connection and a respect.
Yeah, it's really it's a freeing state to be in. Like, when you really think about it, like, and what's so interesting, because I know I've been here. If you say, I like strawberries, and another person's like, well, I like cantaloupe, you go, you're going to like strawberries, whether you like it or not. Like, you're going to like these strawberries and be like, bro, I don't like strawberries, I like cantaloupe.
And how funny is that? How funny is that? Like, that's, you don't want everybody to like what they want. You want them to like what you want.
Yeah. You're just like, mother, this is why you're gonna like. And instead of, I go, oh, so this is how we approach the situation. Because all it is a situation. It doesn't even have to be a problem or a challenge. It's just whatever you perceive it as. So I go, oh, well, why do you like cantaloupe? What is it that you like about cantaloupe? And it actually turns it into a much more freeing thing for both sides. Because you can do this thing called communicate with each other. And they go, oh, wow, communication is not as easy of a game as people think that it is. They think when we do something, because we do something, we're automatically good at it. For instance, breathing. Most Americans do not breathe correctly. And I can tell, because when you take them through actual intentional breathing, they'll actually, oh my goodness, I feel alert.
And they'll resist.
I feel less foggy.
And they resist too. They resist that different style. Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like, when enough people do something, everyone thinks they're good at it. But that's not necessarily true. And that's okay. And
I think, like, when you talk about communication too, it's like when you see things from different perspectives, it's not even just in business. Like, that's a feature when you can finally grasp, and again, I'll preface, I'm new to this. If you can finally grasp that and not try to make people see your perspective all the time. It was tough for me recently transitioning into this because I grew up in sales, and my whole life was like, I have this product and I need you to want it. You know what I mean? So, and that, and my life, when I look back now, I blurred the lines of my personal life and my professional life, because there's times where, like, in my, whether it be a dating relationship or whatever, or with a significant other, and, you know, I was unintentionally doing that to try to get my way, or to see, there's somebody to see my perspective. And what I've been doing recently is I don't even want my perspective in it until I've fully gotten their perspective. So instead of like putting my stuff out there, like, I'm asking questions to try to drill down and make sure that I'm even on the same page and understand how they got there, so that when I go to present my different one, I need to make sure it even makes sense. And so what I realized I was doing in the past was I was basically like being like a doctor and like walking in and diagnosing, but diagnosing prior to asking what the symptoms are. And I think, like, once I changed that or that style and that structure, the floodgates were open, man. It's so interesting, because we take a tool, and we use the tool, and then we realize, oh, I can get better at using the tool by being a better version of me. You know, you talk about sales. I was actually so adverse to selling because I saw what salespeople could do, and it was crooked. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, if that's selling, I want no part of it. Like, I've done things I've done sales I'm not proud of in my years and stuff like that, but I've also done a lot I've been proud of. And it's one of those things where I appreciate you saying it the way you said it, because that's one of the reasons I restructured my entire business to do what I do now every day, is because it's my style now is showing, not selling. So instead of trying to sell things to people, I'm just going to tell them what it is that I'm doing or what I have, and then just letting people organically come in. Because the more that you push and the more you prod, things become transactional, and then the authentic, genuine thing from the beginning of our conversation is gone. And then you might make that deal, but you're only going to make that one deal with that person. Like, if you can build a genuine, authentic relationship with somebody, it's going to mean many deals. And I'm not saying build genuine relationships so you can make money. Not you, but anybody who wants to take that out of context. What I'm saying is, your business and your life is more happy and filled when you have long-term relationships with people as opposed to transactional one-off projects and things like that.
100%. And I think that goes back to strategy too. Like,
yeah,
I want to essentially, I want to make strategy a beautiful thing for people because it's important to have. I think we should have it with intentionality. But one of my mind shifts, Myron Golden was the guy who really shifted my thinking around what sales was. And because sales is seen as like this bad thing, like, oh my goodness, this is selling. And when I realized what sales really was, I go, oh crap. So it's like, it's a skill, just like anything else. People can learn it and acquire it. And then they're like, you say, showing, not selling, right? Like that is selling in its own right.
it is.
But it's saying like what people need to see to be okay. Like, oh, well, when they see the result, now it's easier for them because they're like, oh, okay, well, that's not so bad. But when you hear, I remember me and my wife went to this dealership, this car dealership. I swear, dude, like vultures.
They start circling the parking lot.
Yeah, there's like 5 of them. Like all like it's just like get away from. I almost wanted to get like a broom, start swatting them away. Like, God, get back. And I go, I had a friend who was a chiropractor, and he would wait until people were actually done at the car lot, because most people wanted to think about it. They wanted to build a relationship with someone too. And so he would wait until they left and say, hey, did you get a car that you liked? He goes, actually, no, I didn't. Now, this is strategic selling because he was going to sell them on something, but he was going to listen to them first. Instead of the whole vulture, I got what you want, I got what you need, what you want.
I'm going to make you millions.
I just want to look at the effing cars. Can I just take a look?
And that's the same, especially for you obviously more than me. When you walk into a world with your resume and your credentials, it can be a car lot, or it can be a bar, or it can be a networking event. The vultures will come because they want to see, they know you have value, and they want to suck that value out of there. The difference is when somebody's coming into you and wants to build something sustainable, they want to put their value into you and your value into them. And I think that's that divergent sales strategy from being a true partner and being a vendor.
Yeah. I mean, that is huge what you just said right there, because I was like, wow, this came from Dan Kennedy. He talks about what's a vendor and what's a partner. And when they see you as a commodity, that means they can take you or they can leave you.
That's what it comes down to, dude. As soon as you accept that transactional relationship, you're the product.
Yeah. And I was just like, holy crap. He goes, first they pay you for the thing. And if they can get that thing anywhere and everywhere, they're like, okay, whatever. Then they pay you for your expertise. And what I learned, I go really deep with people. I didn't even know that I went deep with people because I've been punched in the face. Like, so you kind of, your level of deep is going to be a little bit different than others. Like, you're just a little bit, you're not afraid. What are you going to do? Punch me in the face? I've already been punched by the highest level in the world. And then they pay you for who you are. And I go, holy crap. Like, the game is figuring out who you are. And ultimately, when you can step in and become that person, it is really, really cool. Like, I look at a Mike Tyson, an Evander Holyfield, a Dana White, some of these people who have gone so far and so high. Best believe they've hit their lows.
Well, and even talking about Dana White, and I mean, you spoke on my world of where this all started and some of the style. You complimented me earlier about my style. I got that style from that circle. I mean, I follow, the Shane Gillis, the Joe Rogans, all that stuff. And the reason is not for political views or humor or anything like that, or for healthcare advice, but it's for style. It's because regardless of the content that they're putting out, their style is genuine and it's raw. And it's actually, with the exception of some recent things, you read all of their stories, whether it be Dana White, Joe Rogan, Tony Hinchcliffe, all those guys, they're building all this on their own back. And they have sponsors and stuff like that, but that's now. You go back to when they started that. I mean, people today, you hear Kill Tony's talked about all the time, but they don't realize Kill Tony's been around for 12 years. We've talked about this before. And, Joe Rogan's show, he's got a $200 million contract with Spotify, but that dude was shooting that shit in his basement in the beginning. It's like, that's the stuff where like people don't realize. And Dana White, talk about thinking outside the box, and when you're handed a shit sandwich turned into a massive cheesesteak. I mean, you take COVID and he's like, well, fuck these rules. I'm going to go buy an island or rent an island or whatever the hell he did. And it's like, that's the shit. When I saw that, I was like, those are the types of people that I want to aspire to be, because it's not like I'm going to go rip people off. It's the world just changed, and I'm not going to go sit and watch Netflix and wait for it to figure itself out. I'm going to figure out how to adapt.
Yeah, I got to give Dana that one. That was super cool to be like, F this, I'm going to buy an island.
That's the most baller thing to fucking do.
Yeah, you got to give respect where respect is due. And what's interesting, because I was a fighter, right?
You still are. You still are.
Yeah, the fighter never goes away. That's the truth. And I say that to say, oh my goodness, we pit ourselves with certain things and against other things. Like Dana White he's a businessman. And a fighter is a fighter, and a businessman is a businessman. Not true. You can be all things to all people and figure out, okay, how do I be the best businessman that I can be? How do I be the best fighter I can be? How do I be the best warrior, the best strategist? How do I align with my principles and my values and my mission? How do I be the husband that I want to be and the father that I want to be? And you look at it and you go, wow, there's a lot. And that's a good thing, because you learn to be the best leader that you can be. And I'll go strictly on Jim Rohn, one of my favorite quotists. He goes, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. And I repeat that to myself on a regular basis. That's a
good one. That's a good one we'll close out on, because at the end of the day, everything we're telling people, we are humans. We are fallible humans, and we make mistakes every day. And anything we say is not of a place of we are better than or we do this. It is actually, in that statement right there, is we are just trying to motivate and empower for today to be better than yesterday.
Yep. Amen to that.
And as long as, actually, if we distill this entire conversation down, that's probably what it comes down to, is if no matter what it is in your life, if you can reflect on today being better than yesterday, then you won.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say, for anyone who did listen, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking in the information. And also, if you ever want to comment, even if it's a middle finger, I'm down for anything.
Gesture however you want.
I don't prefer middle fingers, but if that's what you want to give, that's what you want to give. But yeah, share with us what you like, what you love, what you hated, because we like to constantly grow, and the best way we grow is through communication.
I could have said it better, man. So everybody, tune in next week, FreeMind Fridays, all right, on the FreeMind Network podcast. And shout out to all the celebrities that we talked to today. Open invite for any of the celebrities that we talked about today. We would love to have you on the podcast. It is 60 minutes of your time. I do love Joe Rogan, but I like to make the comment that I take up less of your time because I don't take you out to dinner or anything like that ahead of time. So, we are only asking for 59.59 seconds of your time. And if any of those those guys, and especially I see you guys in the circuit, and I will be hitting you up next week, Rock. So get ready for an in-person shaking hands, and I'm going to be trying to get them on this podcast. So as much pressure as all of you listening can give to those guys we talked about today, we'd love to have a conversation with them on a Friday night or a Friday as well.
Sweet.
Awesome. Hey, you take care, buddy.
Have a good one, my brother.
You take care,
soon.
man. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur or one that's looking to expand, contact the FreeMind Network today, and we'll help you scale. We'll help you start. We're going to be there for you in your corner.
You know my story, right? Rise to fame from the pain to glory, right?